Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to the CloudOps Junction. So we are going to start a new series or a new topic, which is going to be Azure Virtual VNets or Azure Virtual Network. In this, we will talk about the concept, use cases, importance. We will also take the few real-world example. By the end of this playlist, you will be able to have a good understanding and a strong understanding of VNets and its other services like firewall. We will talk about firewall, subnetting, Azure Virtual Network components. So after watching this entire playlist, you will be able to design secure, scalable Azure network architecture in Azure. So the agenda is like what is the Azure network, why it is important, key component like address space, subnetting, peering, security. We'll also take a few real world example, best practices, and we'll also try to do a small demo. So without wasting any time, let's jump into the definition. What is Azure Virtual VNet? So Azure Virtual VNet is a fundamental network services in Azure that allows cloud resources to securely communicate with each other with internet or with your on-prem networks. Uh, think it uh, think of it as a private isolated network inside your Azure. Similarly, your on-prem traditional network, but fully managed in cloud services. So if I take an example, suppose this is your on-prem network. And inside your on-prem network, you would be having a switch or a router or a switch that was configured. Under that switch, you might have configured a series called dot 192.168.0.1/16, and under this you have created you might have created different subnet like there is one subnet and we have another subnet. This one subnet has a range something like subnet. You can subnet is something like network inside a network. It's a simple definition. 192.168.0.1/24, and another you can create like let's take an example 128.168.1.1/24. So this is how your on-prem network is designed, and there are some of the virtual machine or a server that was created, and these servers are connected to these switches and router at the backend. So this is how your on-prem network usually are configured. Okay. Now on the Azure also similar concept is done, but this is a virtual network. That's why it's called as Azure Virtual Network. So now if I go back to my slide, it says the component, it's logical isolated. What does mean the logical isolated? But that means the traffic between Azure resources. You can actually segregate or isolate your environment. You can keep some of your resource to the public, some of your resource you can keep it to your private. That is called as logical isolations. IP addressing. You can use CIDR block just like your on-prem network. You can actually have it on your Azure Virtual Network as well. You can have subnetting. Subnetting, you can divide your VNet into multiple subnets for better organization and security. Routing and automation set up for a basic routing, but you can customize it. Basically, you can have a different connectivity if you want to have a VNet or not a VNet. If you want to have a virtual private gateway or you want to have an express route, if you want to have a VNet peering across your cross region network connectivity, that can be done in routing stage also. Now, if I talk about the key component of virtual network, if I talk about, let me talk about address space and subnetting. So you can actually use Azure. I mean, there are different calculators available, or if you know how to calculate it, you can calculate it also. But if you go to internet and if you try to search for CIDR range calculator, you can easily do it. Let's do a CIDR calculator. And let's open the first one, or anyone you can open it. Like this one, I want to open it. So I want to have 10.0.0.1. The basic I want to have 16. So under 16, you might be getting somewhere around. If we select slash 16, so then we will be getting somewhere around uh, 65,536 IP address count. And if I make it 24, if you don't know how to calculate, you will be getting 256 IP address starting from this, and this would be the last IP. All right, this is how you can actually calculate your subnets. Now, if I would say, let's take a real world example at why we need a subnetting. All right, let's take an example. Suppose you have a VNet over here by the name of, let's create it by 10.0.0.0 slash 16. This is your VNet. All right. Under this VNet, we have a two different subnet created. One subnet is this, and we have another subnet called this. This is your, let's take an example. This is your public subnet 10.0.0.1 slash 24, and this is your private subnet 10.0.1.1 slash 24. And you have created a web application which is exposed to internet in your public, and you have created a database, a SQL database or any MariaDB database into your private subnet so that it is not exposed to internet. Now there is a connectivity between both. There is a peering because these are into the same VNet. So there is a direct connectivity between it. Now you have a user over here who is using a laptop. When he try to hit the application, he will be hitting the web application. But when if we try to hit this one, he will not be able to hit it because this is into your private subnet. There is a no direct connectivity to the internet is available. So in case if this laptop user wanted to access any of the data, he would be hitting to the web application, and web application will get that data, that request from the database or a SQL server. So this is why uh, isolation is very important, and this is the example of isolations. You can create two or multiple different subnets where you can keep your two-tier, three-tier applications configured accordingly. So now let's do one thing. Let's try to deploy a virtual network on Azure. We will create a VNet over here. That VNet would be something start with 10.0.0.1 slash 16, or we can have 0.0.10.0.0.0. That's all right. We can have that one also. And inside it, we will create two subnet. One subnet here, and similarly, we will create another subnet. Okay, this will be your subnet A, and this is going to be your subnet B. Okay, now there will be some range associated to it. We will come back to it later, and we'll see how it is being configured. Let's try to configure it first. Let's jump into the our Azure console. So what we will do, we will search for a Azure Virtual Network, and we'll hit on create. So we'll create a new VNet-RG. We will give a name and we will give a name like demo VNet, and we are going to create on West U. Okay, let's create on East US. Click to next. Now we don't want to have any kind of encryption. We don't want it now. So there is a Bastion service that is used to that is basically used to do the RDP or telnet, because if we do not have a public VNet, if we do not want to have a public IP address associated to our virtual machines, then Bastion can be used. Firewall, we don't want to deploy any firewall as of now, so we no DDoS, anything. We don't want anything. IP range, yes, definitely that. So it has already taken at 10.0.0./16. So it is giving us 65,536 IP. If I lower down it like 24 IP address, then it will give us 256 IP address. And if let's take it /16, all right, let's delete it then. And we will create it from the scratch. We have deleted the IP address. We'll click on new 10.10.10.0.0.0/16. So what IP address we are taking, what VNet range we are taking, what address space we are taking, 10.0.0.10/16. Let's add a subnet as well. To add the subnet, we have to add two subnets, right? One would be subnet A. There's going to be subnet A, all right, and it should be /24. We will take a range of 24. So it will start for 10.0.0/.10.0.256.256. The end, so it end at 256, okay? And we'll create on hit. We'll create another subnet. That's gonna be a subnet B. So this is gonna be subnet B. Sorry. And the range gonna be /24. So it start with /25. So we are taking a range of 10.100/24. So it's taking a range of 10.0.1.0/10.100.255. We'll add another one and we'll create hit OK. It will review and then it will create. Okay, the resources deployed. And if I go on settings, if I go on address space, you will find the IP address is 10.0/16 is the range. That's the same that we have taken it over here. Now subnet, if we go on subnet, we have two subnets, subnet 1 and subnet 2. It has 10.0/24 and 10.1.0/24. So we will update our diagram with the IP address range. So it has 10.0.10./24 and we have 10.0.1.0/24. So if I create if I create a virtual machine in both the network, if I'm going to create a virtual machine in both the VNet, on both the subnet, then what the IP address it is getting, it will be getting 10.0.0.4 and it will be getting 10.0.1.4. These are the IP address that these machines are going to create. Now let's do one thing. Let's deploy a virtual machine to over here. I will create on create virtual machine, create virtual machine. Let's deploy on same VNet, demo, East US. We don't want any availability zone. Okay, and we want a standard. These are fine. Let's take a Now, on when we come to the part like network configuration, we can actually select the demo network, DO network that we have created. Now it will ask on which subnet you wanted to deploy this virtual machine. Let's deploy .vnet1. You want to associate a public IP address? Yes, we want to associate a public IP address because we do not have a best-end network. So to connect to it, we definitely need a VNet services, and we are allowing a port number 3389 to connect to it. We'll create and we'll click on create. All right, the virtual machine is created. We'll go on view network. Sorry, we will go on view virtual machine, view deployment. Now you can see the IP address that it has got is 10.0.0.4. Now you will say, how would I have predict that this will be getting uh, 0.10.0.0.4? So there is something called in Azure called IP Azure Reservation. So what is this reservation is when you create a new subnet, Azure automatically reserve 5 IP address. The first IP that it's going to reserve is for the network address, like this one. The first IP is reserved for network address. The second IP is reserved for DNS. All right. And the third IP it reserved is reserved for future in used. Now the fourth IP is default for gateway, and the last IP that it is reserved for broadcast, something like this. So normally, so if you are using, let's take an example, if you are using /24 as a subnet, the which normally has somewhere around 256 IP, so you will be only left with 251 IP for you will be getting only 251 IP for use. So if I remove 0123, then definitely the next IP would be 04. That's why I have written it over 4. Okay. And if I try to connect to my virtual machine, so now I'm logged into my virtual machine. Let's open command prompt, CMD, and see the IP config. And you will find 10.0.0.4. Okay, and the default gateway is 10.0.0.1. Same thing I have told you over here that the default gateway would be the fourth IP is what default gateway. Okay. All right, so this was a small introduction how you can actually configure your first VNet. Now there are some best practices as well that you should consider before deploying your virtual machine. So if I say there are some, so the best practices is you always use your NSGs and firewall. You implement your private linked instead of exploring to service publicly. Uh, Before that, you plan your VNet that overlapping of IP address range is not there to avoid the conflict in your hybrid and your cloud scenarios. Uh, Use a smaller chunk of VNet instead of using large one because it will help you small multiple VNets. Uh, Definitely applying a VNet, applying a subnet NSGs will enhance your security. Enable monitoring with your virtual network watcher that will help you to improve your to monitor your VNet traffic. So these are the few best practices that you should configure. You should take in your consideration before deploying it. So this was a small introduction about the Azure Virtual VNet and how you can create your Azure Virtual VNet and your subnet. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a wonderful day.